All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. I don't know why I'm holding a pen. So, as you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insight, and experiences that will help you move the dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So today we have gym owner, FitBiz owner, Joey Huber. What's up, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I am so amped for this one. So, as I was just telling you in our conversation, I've been on a kick of not downgrading the foresight or like the vision for businesses, for my impact that I want to have. And so that's why I think you're the perfect person to have on, because you're at a point where a lot of people would look at it and, like you said, they would say like, this is kind of the summit that I'm looking for. But you said this is like your base camp. So what first of all, have you always had just like a really big vision, or is it something that keeps like leveling up as you keep leveling up?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. And second, I think it is something that as you accomplish things, you're kind of breaking, at least for me, breaking the mold of like what can be done, especially because you start surrounding yourself with people that are doing a lot of the things that you never thought were possible. As you ascend, like you naturally, I think, surround yourself with these people. But for me, I've always been, I don't know if it's, a gift or a curse or what it is, but I've always been really paranoid about like wasting my time, in not being able to accomplish enough, in this life. And so I've always set really high goals, because I just don't want to get to the end and be like, man, I could have done so much more, So for me, I'm trying to, optimize every second of the day to be able to not waste anything.
Yeah, I feel that on a very deep level. So one thing that might be useful, because there are people who are listening who are going to know you from the gym, but for people who don't know you or know your backstory, just kind of give people the Cliff Notes version of from when you were, running boot camps out of a basement to where we are right
Bringing
now.
Us back, man. Bringing us back, yeah. So essentially, like I got into this, I got into business, over a decade ago, opening Body by Design, a gym in the Milwaukee area, out of the basement of a church, right? Just getting started with what my vision was. And over the course of the past 10 years, I've built that business to be pretty successful, and now I largely teach other gym owners how to do the same thing, with strategy that's worked for me, tactics, things that I've learned along the way, and with the objective of giving them that same level of freedom that I've been able to experience. And so I spend all of my day doing that, but still pop into the gym and still have boots on the ground and really trying to always optimize it and make it like the coolest freaking gym ever. And so my roots are here, and but I just love the game of business so much. I used to love fitness more than anything, and now once I really started getting into business, I just love the game of business more. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to level myself up in business, or figure out what other people are doing and how I can kind of leverage that to learn more.
Yeah. So I want to go through, because there are people I know who don't have any type of side hustle. They just have like their 9-to-5, but they want to start one.
Yeah.
I know people who have a very part-time side hustle who want to just like start generating more income from it. And then I know people who are looking to really take their like business to the next level. So kind of progressing through, because you were telling me like what gets you from 0 to 1 is not what gets you from 1 to 2.
Yeah.
So starting with people who are just doing a 9-to-5 but have an idea, what is something, even if it's not something you would say like everyone should do this, but what did you find, at least looking back for yourself and the people you coached, that have had success from 0 to 1, just like getting started?
Dude, I think it depends on where you're at in life. Like it's different, like taking your side hustle to a full-time gig. Like when you're like I was young, no kids, not married, any of that stuff. Like it was easier for me to, so to speak, like burn the boats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And which is what I did, and so it's harder when you're older and have, kids and a wife and that kind of stuff. What I mean by burn the boats is, I don't know if you ever heard the analogy.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
you know, if you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats. That's the only way that you're going to succeed. And I'm a big fan of still doing that. Maybe not as wisely as, because I do have, you know, a kid, you know, kids and a wife, and so. But I think that if you're young, I think that's the time to do it. Right? Is to go all in, because you will the opportunity as you get older, it will be more higher and higher risk. You know, risk to reward ratio. When you're young, the risk to reward ratio is really in your favor, because what are you going to lose? You know, what do you have to lose? At any job, you can start over again. And in your ability to learn, especially now, e-learning and the ability to learn for free basically is just, I mean, you could do pretty much anything you want in 3 to 5 years. You can learn you can be an expert at whatever you want, you know. And so when you're young, I think it's really important to take risk, you know, not like careless risk, but when you get older, I think that it's important to be able to identify what your goal is and then carve out the amount of time and align yourself with the person that you need to be to accomplish that. You know, I'm never a fan of like being, you know, half in and half out of anything. So you can still be all in mentally while you have a full-time job of making this thing work, right? And so I think that that's probably the advice I would give is like, and like anything, like you were saying, like the person that you need to be to go from, I mean, that stuff changes, you know? And so at first, like you need to be, and I don't want to get too much into like a different answer to a question you didn't ask, but yeah, who you are and who you need to become needs to be aligned with what your goals are, or you're just going to be miserable because you're not going to reach them.
Yeah. One thing that actually stands out to me, and it's so cool, I think, us two sitting down particularly talking about this, because I think, in a point you were at 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like a cool dichotomy going on. But so one thing that I completely agree with is, in a conversation I have with my roommate all the time, we're both in our mid-20s, and we always like second guess different like moves we want to make or like risks we want to take.
Yeah.
And we always go back to, we're 24, 25.
Yeah.
We could mess everything up for the next 5-10 years, like based on what life throws at us, and we'll still be able to start over and be fine. And I think, unfortunately, there is this false pressure that's put on people at as early as like 15, 16, 17 to have it all figured out and like be established.
Yeah.
And that's for someone who is looking to like go big, which if you're listening to a podcast called The Best Self Blueprint, you're probably looking to go big.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to realize, is coming from someone who's gone through it, like realizing you have time to mess up.
Yeah, and that you need to mess up. And the goal is just to fail fast, you know, because if you're, you know, you're either going to be successful or you're going to fail, and you want to fail as quickly as you can so you can make the adjustments and then try again, right? And so it's essentially like a loop, right? And if you can tighten that loop of failing, you know, to as small as you can, then as long as you don't quit, that's the caveat to all this, is you can't quit, right? Because if you determine that you're not going to quit, then it just becomes a long, like how long can you endure? The time horizon. Do you know what I mean? Like, you will be successful if you make adjustments from your failures. It just becomes how long until, not if, but how long, right? And so when you look at it from a long enough time horizon, even if it takes you 20 years to accomplish something, you'd be 45. You could be a millionaire. You could do whatever you want at that time. Like, are you willing to endure for that period of time? Some people say they are, but they're not really, because when they fail, they quit, right? Or when something doesn't go according to plan, they quit, right? And so, but for those people that really do have the life that they want, and are making the money they want, and have the time and freedom, I bet you they took a disproportionate amount of risk and stress as compared to everybody else, which is why they have a disproportionate return on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when people say like, oh, this person, they're driving this, they're doing this, but behind, I think a lot of what you don't see is the risk that they had to take when they were young, and not necessarily go the path that everybody wanted them to go, whether it's through traditional college and then work for this person. And that stuff is not, you don't have to endure a great amount of stress or anxiety or pressure like you do as an entrepreneur. And I'm just speaking with what I know, right? There's a lot of that, right? And so I think that the people that are able to endure that and not quit over a long enough time period, they deserve that disproportionate amount of return, because of what they put in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of the game of business in general. And the idea is to level yourself up so you're just a better player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of the game of life too, right? That's why that Robert Frost two roads quote is so, like, it's such a cliche.
Yeah.
Is because of the fact that in life, usually if you're willing to take that kind of like more scary, daunting road, with the bigger possibility of like risk and failure and disappointment and all that, but you make it through, and it's that same thing. And I've noticed this with trying to build these businesses, with my athletic pursuits, with relationships. It really is what you're talking about, at least from my experience, again, of when you don't put quitting on the table, when you just like slide it off and let it shatter on the ground, it just makes everything so much simpler. And that was there are kind of two stories I have for that. One, we did a 24-hour workout over at Lifetime where we essentially were in the gym for 24 hours, and the goal was to get through this circuit as many times as possible. And there was a point maybe like 19 hours in where all three of us, there were 4 to start, 3 were left. One of them had left, and we were all pretty beat and tired and wiped out. And I remember the other 2 guys, and I'm sure I did too, just looked rough. And we were kind of getting down on ourselves. And I said, guys, as long as we don't walk out those doors, we're fine. Like, as long as you don't quit and you don't leave, you can go as slow as you want, and you're good. Like, we've hit what we're trying to hit. And it led me into that lesson of, especially recently, as I've done a push for like the businesses that I'm doing, I think as you level up, so do some of the problems that pop up. And same thing. It was like there were a couple things that popped up where I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna teach me a hard lesson. But again, because quitting was completely off the table, I didn't have to stress about, well, do I like just quit and close up shop? And it's like, no, that's not even an option. So what do we do now?
And some people are, like athletics, some people are predispositioned to have some of those, character traits that make it easier for them to win. Like, I'm not incredibly gifted in athletics and not super tall and super fast and all that stuff. But from a business, in the sport that I play, I've never had that quit mentality. And that's cool because I was just born with it. I don't know if it's genetics or what it is, but I've never felt like I was going to quit no matter what I've done. So that helped me tremendously when it comes to the game of business. Whereas if I was taller and faster, maybe I'd play a different game like basketball or something, right? And so it's kind of recognizing what skills you have naturally. And I think trying to align yourself with something that would, where you can leverage that, and double down on your strengths, and maybe business isn't for everybody. I always speak about it because that's what I'm passionate about, but it's not, you can tell it's not for everybody. Like, I work with business owners every day. That's all I do. And like, you can tell, you get on the call sometimes and you're like, hey man, this is based on your mindset and your beliefs that you have and what appears to be some of your character traits and skill sets. Like this, unless you change some of those, and not change, but spend a lot of time on self-development, like this is going to be a hard game for you to play. You can just tell, right? It's almost like the short guy that wants to play basketball. It's like, you can be successful, man, but it's good. Just know this is going to be a harder road for you. And as long as you're okay with that, right? And it seems like you are one of those people that like, hey, I'm not going to quit. And so so the ultras that you do, like you have a strategic advantage in those from the mindset perspective of there could be somebody more athletic than you, but you can still outperform them 9 times out of 10. because they're going to give up, whereas you won't, right? And those are my favorite games to play, right? The ones in business is one of them. But like the game where if you take incremental gains, small ones, but over a long period of time, you'll win. Versus like trying to step up to the plate and hit a home run every single time. I'm totally good with hitting singles all day long because I'm never going to quit playing this game. And I know that they're going to add up versus playing against somebody that only wants to hit home runs. But if he don't make it, if he doesn't hit a home run within 5 at-bats, he's fucking done with the game. I don't know if I can swear, sorry.
Oh, yeah, let it fly.
He's done with the game. You know what I mean? And that's the mindset of most people nowadays is like, look, I'm going to try this thing, but if I don't hit a home run, like, it ain't going to work. It's like, no, man, you got to put 10 years in. The guys out there hitting home runs have been swinging the bat since they were, 6. Like, and it's the same way. And it's stuff that you've been training for, like, business is like, if you want, I would rather be successful for sure instead of fast any day of the week. Do you know what I mean? And to me, that's like, it's settling in and being willing to play that game for a long period of time, or at least what most people would consider to be long.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I need to keep reminding myself because like you, I have the natural inclination for like, I want to just optimize.
Yeah.
And part of that is I know I could be growing the businesses faster, but I don't anticipate either of the companies that I'm developing right now. I don't really care to, like, I don't have an exit strategy. I want to just continue to like work them because they're passions of mine.
Yeah.
And so for me, I need to continue to remind myself you need to let cement dry. So you need to like build the foundation, get to the level, and make sure that you know how to like sustainably handle that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, just knowing me, I'll stack things really sloppily on top of each other until it's like a crazy balancing act that I just can't sustain. And so I think that's kind of one aspect of it is, like you said, are you just building it fast to get it like done so you can like brag about it? Or are you doing it in a way that has that like solid foundation to where when you're like stacking the pieces, they're solid?
Yeah. I mean, and that comes down to what you're trying to create. Like, do you want to make something that you can make a couple post about that everybody likes or shares, or do you want to make something that your kids can be proud of? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think once you identify that something your kids can brag about, I think that you go about building it different. And I've always had to remind myself of that as well, because you don't want to build a house of cards. You need to. And to me, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Do you know what I mean? And so like if you take things slow, you can build it strong. If you go too fast and something doesn't work, you don't know how to dissect it. You don't know what you did wrong, right? Let's say you're growing your gym, as an example, and you dump a bunch of money into the build out, and then hiring your team, and then you spend a lot of money on marketing, and then you spend a lot of money on a big grand opening, and then you spend a lot of money on all these different events with prizes, and it doesn't work, and you don't get all these members, right? Well, you did so many things at once. How are you able to look back and identify what didn't work and what did work? You're almost back at square one, and that really sucks because it was a very expensive test versus rolling one thing out at a time, verifying that works, and then moving on to the next piece. You do have to have patience to do that, but again, it's like it may take you a year to accomplish something that maybe you could accomplish in 6 months, but at a much lower risk, right? Because you're not taking, 1 step forward and 3 steps back. If it were to fail, you're just continually taking 1 small step forward over a longer period of time. And sometimes you see people get lucky and they do get it right the first time and they take off in 3 months. They have this amazing whatever, but that's the exception. I don't think that's the rule, and so it tricks you into saying, hey, I should be going faster because X, Y, and Z is going faster. But nobody's sharing the stories about how they went too fast and failed.
Yeah.
So all you're seeing is, especially on social media, just the things of success stories of people that had these huge accomplishments really fast, but I don't think that that's really what's happening. I think that that's just a couple one-off cases that people love to read about, but for every one of those, there's probably 10 businesses that failed from going too fast.
Oh, at least, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And that's one of those things. I talk about social media on here all the time. I use it for two things. One, business, and two, it's a free storage for my pictures and videos. That's it.
Yeah.
But like you're talking about, it's a numbers game. So people say, oh, there are so many examples of these millionaires and billionaires and all these things. And yes, there are a lot of things that they lay out that you can study and like take pieces of it from and like try to incorporate aspects of what they're doing without just trying to be a carbon copy of that person. But like you're saying, there's 8 billion people on the planet. So if you see 50 that are super successful, how many are you not seeing that, like you're talking about, tried it and just stumbled and fell? And so I think that aspect of it is really important. I do want to switch gears a little bit though, because there's one thing that I think is kind of the reverse of what we've been talking about, of like optimization, analytics, like all the quantifiable like metrics and of building the life you want as it pertains to your career and your mission. But in terms of just life outside of impact and mission and career, one thing that I really enjoy just about your story is the fact that you did go from like hustling, working 80 hours a week and doing really well at all of the things you were tackling, to you really shifted your focus to like time with your family, being present, making the most of like the days that you have with the people who mean the most to you. So when it comes to like personal revelations, as you've like gone down these like relentless pursuits of building your empire or building your impact, what are some of the things that you think might trip people up who get almost like too tunnel vision and start neglecting other things?
Yeah, man. And that's something that I think everybody has to kind of learn for themselves. But for me, the more you surround yourself with people that have so-called made it to the top of the mountain, the more you realize they kind of all have the same warning, the same message and warning. And it's when I was 20, all I wanted in life was to be a millionaire, and once I became a millionaire, all I wanted to be was 20 again, and it was just a big alarm of like, man, do not take any time for granted. Like, people think that time is the golden resource, but it's not, because everybody has the same amount of it. What is, to me, is attention, right? And where you spend that time. And that's the golden resource. And so I make it a priority to put my attention towards what I think is what I value the most, because I think when I get older, I won't regret it, right? And so I spend, for anybody watching, I spend probably about, I don't know, I used to spend 80 hours a week working and 20 hours a week hanging out, and it's pretty much the opposite now. I spend about 80 hours a week just hanging out with my family and doing stuff, and maybe about 20 hours a week working. But it's really hard to quantify work, right? For me, at least, because I enjoy it so much. It's a game for me. It's what I like to do. And so when people say like, you need to have a good work-life balance, that's making the assumption that work isn't living for you. You know what I mean? And for me, it is.
Yeah.
And so the balance is not anything that I even think about, to be honest. But I think that, coming back to your question, to really be able to, really be able to act in a manner that is aligned with what your values are. And that first requires you to identify what those are, because I've seen a lot of people spend so much time on things that don't make them happy, for people that don't give a shit about them and never will, that they end up going through life just miserable, man. And to me, that's just like the worst case scenario is like I did all of these things to impress other people that don't care about me, and it's too late to fix it. It can't be fixed. You can't go back and fix it. So like that's why I spend so much time with my family. I can't fix that, you know. I can always fix my business again. I can always start a new one. I can always, but I can't fix if I mess up how much time I spent with my kids, or how, like if I help them learn. And I can tell you, like when I'm on my deathbed, like they don't give a shit how much money dad made in 2022. They cared about like the fact that I was there for their first day of school or their first game of soccer. Like that's what they're going to remember and care about, right? And so it's my job to be able to know that now and not be like, sorry, I wish I would have learned it earlier. That it's my responsibility to realize that right now, because I will not have the opportunity to fix that. And it affects other people besides myself, right? And so to me, it's not necessarily a choice. It is prioritizing and being selfless about it, about my prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
And so it aggravates me when I see like people that it didn't used to, but once I became a father, it aggravates me to see people who don't prioritize their kids, because I think it's just really selfish, and that it's a mistake that they're going to realize but won't have any time to correct it and say, woe is me. Like, I'm sorry I didn't do this, or like I should have known better, or I didn't know, or whatever. To me, that's just bullshit excuses, you know? And so that's the way I look at it. And it's why I changed my life so much, to be able to not just say that, but live it every day. You know what I mean?
Dude, you just hit the reason, like my, kind of what I've attached my purpose to is, I think, unfortunately, people have been desensitized to the fact that they're going to die.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to get pulled into all this abundance of distractions that we have, whether it be working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, or watching Netflix 4 hours a day, 7 days a week or more, or like video games or all of that stuff. And it's kind of like you're talking about, I'm so obsessed that I almost need to like pull myself out of thinking about it all the time, of like, how do I get as many people as possible to wake up to the fact that they're alive but not living?
Yeah.
And so that's a main reason for the podcast, for the businesses, for me being a coach, is I found that, at least for me, with like what I love, what I'm good at, health and fitness is kind of like the foothold I can get in with people. Of if we can get you like eating right, moving your body, taking care of yourself, it'll show you what it feels like to be in a good energy. And then when you have that and you have like the energy and like you just feel better, you feel more confident, you'll be able to attack all these other things with such tenacity and such intention. And that's where it hits the golden point that you're talking about, which is how much intention and immersion are you living with on a momentary basis? Like when you're experiencing something, do you feel like you're actually immersed in it, or do you feel like you're like outside of it, just watching it with no attachment?
Yeah, just an observer of your own life. You know?
Yeah.
But that's a hard battle that you're fighting, because the enemy is social media and Netflix and all of these things, that Instagram, where you know, people aren't their real selves, right? But but they perceive to be, you know, like, and so it's difficult because people seem to be more interested in observing other people's lives than being immersed in their own. It's weird, because I am not like that, you know, and I always give my wife shit for like watching reality shows. I'm like, why the fuck do you care about like what this person is doing, like what they're making for dinner? Like, who cares? Like, let's go do something, you know? And I'm not like, she doesn't do it like all the time, but like, to me, I could care less, you know? And it's like, how do you snap other people out of it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you realize that to be true, like it seems like you do, right? Then you almost feel like this duty to help other people come to that realization, so they're not wasting their lives, you know? And it's not from a point of like, I know something that you don't know, or, I think that I'm more in tune with life than you are. It's from genuinely trying to help them. You know what I mean? And hopefully, you can learn something along the way too.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from other people that like I did not expect to learn anything from, but just by being real and having conversations with them, you never know what you can learn from somebody, man. Like there's people that have so much wisdom. They may not be they may not be like the most intelligent or whatever, but I think one of the most undervalued traits is just being wise, and that comes from experience in life, and everybody has different experiences. I was in the Army before I got into business and all of this stuff, and that's where I really was able to realize just how much people's experiences shape them and how they create different people based on like, because it's such a melting pot, the military, of like all these different kinds of people and their childhoods and how they were brought up and the belief systems that they were taught. And it's like, wow, like you can totally tell like how this person became to be who they are because of their experiences and all of that stuff. And if I can see from their point of view, there's some really good like nuggets in there, some really good like that they don't think twice about. It's just how they've always done stuff. But you're like, man, that's really cool. Like your family's super close because of this, or like you guys like, I mean, you spend every morning together, like taking an hour walk as a family and talking about your day. Like I can see how you guys are such a strong unit and you'll do anything for each other. And they're like, I don't know, that's just what we've always done. That's how we were raised, And I think like when you step outside of your bubble a little bit, you're like, holy cow, like, there's a lot more to life than clocking in every day and working overtime and, spending the weekends watching TV. There's just so much more to it. And I think sometimes it's just really hard to get out of the bubble, man. Like, I think it's really hard for people to snap out of it, So
there's two things I want to talk about. The first one I'll touch on real quick so I don't forget the second one.
Yeah, man.
The first one is, and I've said this on here probably multiple times, but what gets me is when I have friends who know more stats about an athlete than they do about their own life.
Yeah.
That is, I try not to hold on tightly to too many pet peeves, but that may be my number one pet peeve.
Yeah.
The second thing, and what you're talking about, is I've gotten really into travel over the last few years, and I love the form of taking a road trip because it forces you to stop in all these different places.
Yeah.
And I travel solo once a year. So it's a minimum 1 week trip, usually a little longer if I can. And when you're doing a solo road trip, you either don't talk for a week or you meet new people. And I opt for meeting new people. And so you get to meet people of all different backgrounds from all different places with all different sets of experiences. And if you're just open to talking to people, not through a screen, same thing. You just learn so much about their story and what shaped them into who they are and how they view the world. And if you just know a little bit about how to interact and what questions to ask people, you will pick up on, I think, far deeper wisdom than if you just rely on what you experience on a day-to-day.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and their experiences become part of yours, And so I think that's one of the things that is going to be a little sad, because I think it's gonna be a little bit, there's going to be less of that one-on-one kind of interaction, I think. In just the way that it seems that the world's kind of trending, where it'll be a little bit more like superficial over phones and texting, and it just seems like that's kind of the route. So I think people will miss out. Not that there's not going to be pros to it, the pros to like the speed of communication and the access of information, and I think there's going to be pros to it, but I think that's one of the cons, is like the actual like relationships and like the level of the deepness of the relationship that you can have with other people, because it's just, there's some things that like can't be done over FaceTime. I think it's different about like being with somebody. But that's cool that you do that, because it sounds like something that would be like right up my alley to go and just stop in some small town and jump in a diner and have a talk with somebody about something. It's I think it's really cool.
I've got some stories I'll run through with you at some point.
Yeah, man.
There's so much that I want to unpack. But One question that just keeps popping into my head that I was going to wait till the very end, but I just want to ask it. If you could relay like one message, one truth, going through all of the business stuff you have, just your personal life in the military, building a family, everything that you've done, and working with so many, yes, coaches and business owners, but just working with people and seeing how people operate and what people are going through and just kind of your lens of how the world works. What's one like message you just want to give out to the world, aka anyone who decides to tune into this? Like, what's one truth you've picked up on, or just something you think the average or general person should hear or needs to hear?
Yeah. I think that one thing that is important is that right now is like the best time in the history of the world to be able to do whatever you want, and we don't know how long it's going to last for. Right? You have unlimited access to information. You have a lot of people that would be willing to support you from like a mentorship perspective. Like if somebody came to me and I could tell they were being really genuine and they just really needed some guidance or some help, like I genuinely would be willing to help them. I don't know for how long or for whatever, but like that didn't used to exist, right? If you wanted help from somebody, you would have to go to a college, a 4-year, whatever. And so I think like the ability to be what you want to be and live the life that you want to live, there's no better time than right now to be able to do that. And maybe it'll get better, but from the history of time, I think right now the present is without a doubt, there's more opportunity than ever. But people, from what I've seen, people underestimate the amount of work it's going to take, and they overestimate their ability to do that work, right? And I think that if there's one thing that I've learned is to be as humble about the entire process as you possibly can, because it's going to require a good amount of work, and it's going to require that you change who you need to be in order to reach the goals that you have set. And so if you're somebody that's resistant to change, if you're somebody that, like, it's okay, but you may not ever reach the goals that you have in life unless you're willing to change. And I usually break everything down into three pieces. It's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but
I love it.
Skills, beliefs, and character traits. To me, those are the three things that need to be developed and changed depending on what your goals are. You can learn pretty much any skill that you want to learn. The belief systems that you hold, like if you don't believe that you can, become or charge what you're worth or become a millionaire, or you're not going to, right? And then the character traits, like if you're unwilling, and this is what I mean about changing, like the character traits that you need to have when you want to start a business will be things like incredible work ethic, sacrifice, the ability to endure pain, different kinds of pain, the ability to work long hours with little sleep. You got to get something started off the ground, right? That's what's going to serve you at level 0. But to get from 0 to 1, you'll need to start changing your skills. Maybe now you don't need to learn how to use tools to build something, but you need to learn the general principles of advertising and marketing and growing your tribe and fulfilling at a high level and being able to, retain customers, right? And so you have to learn that stuff. And maybe you need to change from your character traits of being super hardworking to being more influential, right? So then you can leverage your time across coaches that maybe now you have working for you, and that'll get you to level 1. But then to get from level 1 to level 2, you need to change again, right? Because now we're not talking about the most valuable skill you have is advertising. Maybe now it's sales, right? So you're actually selling people into something that is sustainable for the business, and maybe the character traits, like at this point your ability to work hard isn't going to serve you anymore. Right now you need to be a leader. You need to inspire your coaches and your whatever business you're running, your employees, right? So then they can go out and run the business on your behalf, and that's awesome, right? And you need to have the beliefs that you can be that person. Well, that's going to get you to level 3, but to get for level 4, you see what I'm saying? Like you need to change again.
Yep.
Now you need to learn leadership, right? And you need to be, not self-serving. You need to take ownership over everything, and you need to be. And if at any point you're unable or unwilling to make those transitions, you will not reach the level that you want to. So you need to be satisfied with where you're at, right? Or be willing to make the change. But sitting in that, I don't know why I can't do this, is because of you, right? And so that's kind of like that's what I've learned in the history of the probably 12 years that I've been doing this, is that it's always you. It's always you. It's never anything else. There's never anyone else. You control everything about your life. And the minute that you stop thinking like that, and that you think that your success is out of your control, that's when you lost the game.
Yeah, because that falls under beliefs, right? Like if you believe that at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, that is the most empowering belief if you allow it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that the message is that you can absolutely accomplish whatever it is that you want to if you believe those things to be true. And if you're willing to then say, okay, because man, I've broken this down to gym owners that aren't where and that's who I coach, is gym owners that aren't where they want to be. And they're like, dude, I 100% get what you're saying. I 100% agree with it. I just don't know if I'm willing to do all that, man. Like, I thought this was going to be a fun business. I thought I was just going to get to work out, and like, I'm like, no, man, you got to learn sales and marketing, and you got to go to this level if you want to achieve this in this particular opportunity vehicle, right? Maybe you can apply it to something else, and but that is what it's going to take. And now that you can at least make an informed decision of like, do you even want to go down? Some people look at it and be like, fuck, I ain't trying to go. I'm not spending the next 10 years grinding it out for a maybe. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to do it, right? And that's cool. Just recalibrate your goals.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of guys like me and you that are willing to grind it out for 10 years for an opportunity, for a maybe. You know what I mean? And just learn who you are. And there's nothing wrong with being either one of those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And that's what I always fall back on at the end of the day is it's very obvious my bias is towards taking the risk to really go all in on like your definition of an extraordinary or ideal life. There are plenty of people whose definition of ideal does fall a lot more towards the end of like safety, comfort, control, as to where I'm like, screw it. I'll take all the unknowns if it means that there's a shot at me getting over here, knowing that if I don't go into the unknown, 0% chance.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's just up to like you said, like what is your goal? What is your ideal? And don't let other people talk you into what that is. Like, you need to figure that out for yourself. That's one thing I can confidently say, not just that it worked for me, but in life, if you want to feel good, just feel good about who you are, what you're doing, you need to have a self-discovered version of what is ideal. Because I think that's where all those like shoulds and supposed to's and what's cool, all of that stuff can seep in very easily, especially when you're talking about, again, like companies that have multi-million-dollar budgets to advertise thoughts to you.
Yeah.
But when you have that ability to critically think about intuitively what feels right and aligned, which is a word I love that you've used multiple times, when you can figure that out, I think you are on a lot more clear path to just feeling good about yourself and your life when no one else is around.
Yeah, man. And you'll get there faster. I think that there's a direct correlation between the clarity of your vision and the speed of execution, right? Because if you know exactly where you're going, it's much easier to just follow that path and not get pulled off. But dude, it's hard to figure out it's hard to figure out what's going to make you happy, right? It's not an easy question to answer. And sometimes you find it by default by knowing what makes you not happy and then just doing the opposite of that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's harder to articulate what makes you happy than it is to articulate what doesn't make you happy, and then just don't do that. So if working a ton doesn't make you happy, okay, well then I bet you that if you don't work a ton, you'll be a little bit more happy. Let's find a way to do that. Right. And or does spending time, with you apart away from your family make you unhappy? Yes. Okay, well then let's find a way to spend more time with your family. How do we put together what does that life look like? Right? Like what is it? How do we put that together and build something around that allows for that kind of life? It may have nothing to do with a fancy job. It may have nothing to do with making a lot of money. It may have nothing to do with any of that, right? But first you have to identify what it is that is going to make you happy, and then you can get going, right? Now, if having a ton of money in fancy cars you've identified as what makes you happy, well, okay, then we gotta make some money. So how do we do that, right? But I wouldn't just like set out on the path of I need to get this great job to make a lot of money. But why? Have you identified like that's actually going to make you happy? I mean, it might, but like, don't you want to know before you spend all of this time like pursuing that?
Yeah.
Or like some people, it's like, okay, my parents said I got to get married and have kids. Well, what if that's not going to make you happy? You know what I mean? Like, that's a pretty big decision, right? Are you going to end up with a bunch of kids that you resent and like you don't spend any time on and like ruin their lives possibly? Like that's your responsibility, right? And so like, I think it makes time, and I think everybody does it at different times in their life. But for me, I found out what makes me happy by finding out what doesn't make me happy. That's what worked for me, and then I set my life up to do that, right? Which wasn't easy to do, but once you identify that, like to me, there was just no other solution. Like I'm not going to live unhappy, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get to this place.
Yeah. And this all comes back to that, like, just give yourself the time and space to critically think about your life, your relationships, who you want to be, what you want to do. I think at the end of the day, the main reason I brought you on is because you are an example of someone who took the time to think about that. And once you found the answer, you didn't bitch out. Like you actually did what you needed to do to like make it happen. And I think that's kind of the two-step process of you have to, well, I guess we'll say 3 steps. You have to identify what arena you want to get in. You have to get in the arena. And then you have to stay in the arena after.
Well, dude, and that's what then, if you bitch out, like you just don't want it bad enough yet. That's it. Because when you want something bad enough, like you just don't bitch out. Like, because the alternative is worse. And so you're always going to pick the alternative that suits you better. And you just maybe haven't got to a point where the alternative's worse yet. You know what I mean? For me, like living, misaligned with who I want to be, that alternative, I would prefer just to not even live, right? And so I need to change my life to be exactly how I want it, because the alternative is I just won't do it. I just won't play the game. You know what I mean? And that's the real of it, which is why I'm so aggressive with everything that I do, because there is no other alternative for me. I'm just not going to, right? And so things that from an outsider's perspective are big moves that I make, to me are just necessary. Like it's not a option for me. You know what I mean? It's just what I need to do to get to where I need to be, And so, again, like that mindset's always been part of who I am. And so I do have that strategic advantage, and I prefer to double down on that than like learn something else that I am not like that someone else wants me to learn.
Yeah.
So
I feel that. All right, I've got one more question, but like something that I just keep thinking about the more we dive into these topics, this is a very refreshing conversation for me. Like just having a conversation with someone who has that very similar, like that gear. Yeah. I don't know. You can just kind of like look in people's eyes and see that they have that little gear that like you talk about the more deep, intense, purposeful things, and it just lights a fire. So
yeah,
I appreciate you sitting down, because like this has just like amped me up and got me even more into that amped up pursuit that I've kind of been striding with. But my final question is one I like to ask every human being on the planet, which is for you right now, what's the next step in you pursuing your best self?
Yeah. Oh man. Dude, to tell you the truth, like I'm always I'm always trying to learn as much as I possibly can, and level up. Like I said, it's to me it's like I don't play video games, but I know a popular video game is like Madden, right? And then everybody gets like rankings. You know what I mean? So like Devontae Adams, who's a receiver, like he'll be rated like 92 for speed and then like 94 for agility, and like I look at myself in the same way where it might be like, okay, what's my intelligence level? What's my ability to communicate with other people? What's my ability to develop products that are useful? What's my ability to X, Y, and Z, right? And I have like these rankings for myself, and I'm always trying to level them up proportionally, right? And so when I'm a 99 across the board, I'm the fucking best at what I do.
Yeah.
And I can continue being the best at what I want to do, or I can start a new game that might be different and more fun to play later on in life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so for me, in order to reach like my best self, I need to master these individual aspects of myself, right? And so it goes deep. It's not 4 bars, man. It's like what's my mentality like? What's my quitting threshold? Like what does it take for me to want to quit something, right? What's my ability to endure pain? What's my ability to, handle stress under high pressure situations? And so like I kind of look at myself in all of these different aspects, and I try to level myself up so that I can be the absolute best at the game that I'm playing. Now, again, some of those things may not serve me in different games, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not playing those games, right? And so I ultimately like would love to get as leveled up as high as I can, and then apply it to a larger opportunity vehicle, right? And so, which is what I did with gyms to Fitbiz. I leveled myself up to where I felt like I was probably the best in the game when it comes to like running gyms, right? And I was in a massive organization of gym owners across the world who voted me as the best of running gyms, right? Which was nice to be like voted by your peers, not necessarily like some arbitrary whatever. And then what I was able to do is take those skill sets and then apply them to a opportunity vehicle that better suited those skills that yielded me a higher return than I could get from the gym. I imagine that's the same case when I max out this, so to speak, player of helping gym owners create their ideal business, that who I have become in order to be the best at that can be applied to a larger opportunity vehicle that can help way more people, right? But I have to become that person first.
Yeah.
Or I'm not able to play that game. Do you know what I mean? And so that's my continual work on becoming my best self, is identifying what my strengths and weaknesses are, and then finding either finding the people that can help me level. Not all of them can be leveled up by myself. Sometimes I have to surround myself with people that can break beliefs, right? Because beliefs are part of that. In some beliefs you can't break yourself. They have to be broken by someone else that knows something that you don't know, or believes it to be true, right? And some of them I can do myself. Like I could join you on an ultra and really identify where my quitting is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm like, shit, man. Like I thought I was not going to quit because like I have this, strong mindset, but my quitting threshold physically is not as far as Trevor's is. You know what I mean? So like that could be something that I determine I want to work on, or like I could join Justin in an ice bath and be like, I got to get the fuck out of this thing. You know what I mean? Like, I am by no means like where I want to be or this ultra whatever. I got so much work to do, dude. But to me, it's a continual progress.
Yeah.
And life goes in seasons, and sometimes it's a growth season and sometimes it's not. You don't always have to be in a growth season. You don't always have to, be, nose down grinding, right? You gotta have a balance. And so, that's kind of like my long-winded answer to like how I look at becoming my best self.
Dude, I don't know how I've never thought about it that way, but I've never actually thought about my character Trevor and like the different like you said, like speed, strength,
Yeah.
whatever in Madden, like all those. So I think that's one thing I'm going to do this week is just write out for the game of life that I'm looking to play, what are the actual like attributes that my character needs, and what rating would my character get.
Yeah.
So that's a really powerful
And depending on the game
exercise.
you're playing, dude, I mean, like you may need a lot of empathy. You may not have it, right? I think you do. But like, do you know what I mean? It's like there's different things that you probably need to be really, if you want to be the best, right? And for me, I don't do anything unless I plan on being the best at it, right? And so, in order to be the best, I don't think it just fucking happens. I think it's forged from doing these exercises and then doing the work, doing the fucking work, you know? And so, yeah, it's and don't sugarcoat it, man. Because then you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if you think you're fucking awesome. Like, I rate myself way lower than other people would probably rate me because, like, I just think, like, I have so much work to do. You know what I mean? But that's what keeps me busy.
Well, if this is your base camp, dude, I can't wait to see the summit. But thank you for coming on here.
Hell yeah, man.
Seriously, this almost felt like therapy to me. Just like sitting down with someone who not only has this mindset, but is like you talked about, like forged this mindset for over a decade now and like been in the arena and multiple arenas and like is still standing and like asking for more battle. So
yeah, man, and you're just at the beginning of it now. I mean, and it's a fun game to play, man.
Yeah.
If you're suited for it, you know, if you're suited for it. But it's and the cool thing is that like the spoils of war is great when it comes to the kind of life you can build for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm excited to see your journey, man, and you know, if you ever get stuck at any point and I have some experience at that point, like of course reach out and I'll let you know at least what I did. I'm not saying it's gonna work for you, but
yeah. I'll reach out soon then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Appreciate you, man.
Everybody listening, thank you for tuning in, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this. Obviously, there are a ton of great pieces of insight and info in here. So I'm just going to run through the whole spiel of if you liked anything that we talked about, there's a reason there's a like button. If you have questions about anything, things you agreed with, disagreed with, anything that you have to comment on it in the comments. And then, like I said, there was a ton of great info in here, and I know that you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, so go ahead and share it with them. But thank you again for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Peace!